I want to ask you this one question. Why is it that in workspace places situations you have the high functioning substance user who is rewarded for that behavior? Like they get away because they are so high functioning. They are there on time. They do the sales, but yet they're hiding behind the silence and the pain. And what about you? Are you hiding behind masks in the same kind of situation, but you're too afraid to stand up and say, you know what, there's a problem here and I don't know how to do it? Or mostly are you too afraid of the blame and the shame that comes with it? I've got two beautiful people with me, Marin Nelson and Kevin Hyer. Now, I'd like to ask you two a question. Are you making a difference within the systems, or are you just putting lipstick on a corpse? Marin, how are you today?
I love it. I would like to think that we are not just putting lipstick on. Hi. Thanks for having us. It's good to be here. No, in fact, the company that I co-founded called Soberinth is intentionally trying to reach employees who are currently suffering in silence and don't feel safe to ask for help because of shame. And because we've normalized binge drinking as a culture, and we support all substance use, but we really do focus on alcohol, I think, in a lot of the conversations, because that's the one that continues to be so much more pervasive than any other substance use disorder. And the one that we have a pretty prevalent presence in the workplace, in that we do lots of happy hours and champagne for toasts and wine for a holiday gift. And so it's just so embedded in workplace culture that Soberinth is really trying to reach those employees to help them get off the train, so to speak, to help them get help sooner before it is a full clinical crisis.
Okay, I love that. We'll come back to that. Let me ask you this question first, Marin. Why did you get into Soberinth? What happened? What was the turning point in your life?
Yeah, so I've been sober since 2005, so 20 years of sustained sobriety, and have spent a career in enterprise sales where there's been lots of drinking. Although, let's be clear, when I first got sober, I worked in nonprofit healthcare. There's lots of drinking just everywhere, period, full stop. So this is not just because I was in sales. And I started a group with a few other sober sales leaders when I was a leader at Salesforce called Soberforce. And we did it because of the fact that there was wine being shipped to homes for virtual wine tastings during COVID. And that was problematic and creating unintentional harm. And it was this aha moment for me of like, we've got to increase awareness that not everyone is safe to participate in these events, to receive that kind of thing at their home. And it's not, no one's trying to create harm, but it's just, again, what's so embedded in the way we talk, the way we gather, the way we celebrate, that people often don't think twice. And out of that blossomed this recognition that, one, a lot of people wanted to talk about it. There were 500 employees who joined the group in 5 short months. And two, that when it came to getting tangible help, like where do I go for support? What level of care do I need? What are my options? The benefits we had fell short. And as I dug in more, it became clear that the benefits fell short everywhere. No one had solved for it yet. And so it just became, this was never my plan to be an entrepreneur or to combine my recovery life with my business life. But it just started to become this like passion that I couldn't look away from, where I could see where the solution was. And I wouldn't have been okay with myself not trying to solve it, because there's just way too many people suffering right now.
Yes. That silence, that hiding, that constant hiding, and the fear to be caught is also pervasive, right? And it's not only the recovery, it's also the healthcare, the benefits or the detrimental effects of the alcohol, not only on the brain but on the full body, emotional, mental health space. I love your story, Marin, but let me go back to Kevin. Kevin, tell me a bit, how do you fit in the story?
Sure. Well, I had the privilege of meeting Marin through LinkedIn and having learned the amazing stuff Soberinth is doing. We're kindred spirits on the importance of recovery-friendly workplaces. And that's my passion that I bring alive through my organization, Hyer Calling Foundation. We're a 501c3 that helps people in recovery get back to work. We call it second chances to highly motivated people in recovery. And we provide services insurance does not cover to help people get back into the workplace. So it's like, what does this individual need to get that second chance? And it can be everything from a driver's license being reinstated, sometimes expunging certain, I say that with a lot of asterisks around the certain convictions. We do job placement assistance. We'll give you an internship with us. We'll place you in one to help you get some experience. We do a lot of neat stuff. And when we're doing that, we're also educating employers on the benefits of a recovery-friendly workplace, because there's a legal case to be made for it, which I always bring up because I'm an employment attorney by my background, but there's a business case for it. So you're not only helping folks with their lives and their families, and that's not for nothing, but businesses that embrace this, they come out ahead. I'm sure I'd love Marin's thoughts on that. But there's a business case: lower healthcare costs, lower workers' comp claims, increased productivity, less presenteeism, more loyalty to the company. I mean, what it does for the family members. So we just think at the Hyer Calling Foundation that this is the next frontier in HR. The pandemic exacerbated what was already a crisis in America, that stress, that isolation. People are going back to the office now, bringing with them some of the problematic substance use that they developed. I agree with Marin. It's generally alcohol is what we talk about, although, hard drugs can be just as devastating. People may think of them as more. I'd say it's all equal at the end of the day. The disease of addiction or substance use disorder is substance use disorder. And I wouldn't make them a competition. If someone has a problem with substances, let's help them and let's help their employer at the same time reap the benefits of an employee in recovery. Because I think I'm biased because I'm in long-term recovery. We make pretty good employees on so many fronts. And there's a lot of academic research that backs this up. So it's not just my saying this or Marin validating it. It's just the facts. It's reality. So that's where I come into this, is as a nonprofit, helping people who are highly motivated get back to work, to break that intergenerational cycle of addiction in their families, and help their employers become stronger in the community.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I'm going to go back to you, Marin, because as Kevin was speaking, I'm going to go back to the lipstick on the corpse. Tell me how you're making a difference, because we hear this all the time, and a lot of people are shouting these things. I mean, especially we're on LinkedIn, right? And there's a lot of voices out there, and I'm not negating anything. I'm saying that a lot of us, I do a podcast, so I talk a lot, right? How are you walking your talk?
Well, tell me before I answer, what do you mean by lipstick on a corpse? Like, what is the corpse?
What the corpse is are the systems, right? So what's happening is there's systems out there that are archaic. But we all talk about, there's a challenge within the workplace with addiction. And I'm going to use addiction here. And I know we should be using substance use, okay? But addiction is such a visceral term, and it's so real. So I'm just going to use it here for one moment, okay? Because there's so much stigma and heaviness around that word. And people hide from it and are so afraid of being found out and discovered. And the system, as I said at the beginning, it just covers it up because the system itself is afraid to look at it. So I'm saying are we ready to uncover, to take the lipstick off the corpse and to change and to replace the corpse with a living being?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, yes, and I don't have the ego to say, like, we're going to solve all of it. This is going to take lots of angles and lots of systems changing. The approach we're taking and why we're focused on the workplace is in part informed by the work that I did and what was successful, and that we are finally, for the first time at a Fortune 500 company, talking about the prevalence of substance use disorder and also sobriety. And the reason why I use substance use disorder when I talk about this is because stigma persists and words carry stigma.
Yes,
and we have to bring
yes.
awareness that substance use disorder is a disease, because that's a lot of the reason why we haven't treated it appropriately as a culture and to make it safe, is because it's not viewed as a disease. It's viewed as a moral failing still.
Yes.
And so while I may call myself an alcoholic in recovery in my 12-step rooms, when I talk about the disease of alcoholism, I'm saying substance use disorder very intentionally. And it's because we gotta get everyone caught up that this is a disease. So that's part one. I think the key of what we're doing with Soberint that's really unique and different and no one has done is the culture change to become recovery-friendly workplaces. And so we work with these customers, not to just throw employee benefit into the handbook and expect people to call us, because we know they won't. There's too much stigma, there's too much shame, there's too much fear.
Yes.
We work with HR leaders who are ready to tackle culture. And that's not everyone who says yes. There are plenty of companies who are like, no, thank you. That is too big to ask. Because what we do when we go in there is we find executive sponsors who are sober, who will tell their story authentically and vulnerably out loud to the entire company. Because we know that makes it safe for others to get help. And that takes a very brave individual in a very specific culture that would even allow for a senior leader to tell that kind of honest story. But what we see is that when we start to change the way we talk about it in the workplace, and we actually have honest, straightforward, supported conversations about this and about how prevalent it is, that then employees use our service. And our service is 24/7 coaching by peers. So that's another big difference of what we're doing. We're not using licensed medical professionals. There is a place for them. There is a place for therapists. But my co-founder Ingrid Lindberg and I are big believers in the power of peers, because, again, of that stigma and shame that often people come in with. And so picking up the phone 24/7 to say to someone, I've been there, I get it. How can we figure out your sober journey together? What is your goal? And meeting people where they are. So the third that I call out as a major difference is we don't take a binary approach. We don't say you're sober or not sober. We meet people where they are in their own definition. And as a system, we have defaulted to pretty extreme levels. Inpatient 30-day care, that may be right for some people, but it's a very small percentage that need that level of intervention. And I think it's part of why people wait until they're so sick to get help, because, I wasn't sick enough, quote unquote, at 24 to go away to an inpatient center for 30 days. Had that been my only option for a sober path, I probably would have kept drinking because I wasn't there if needing clinical intervention. But I was lucky in that I had an example in my family of 12-step and 12-step working as the solution. And so that's what I did. So I was able to get off the train, so to speak, of addiction or substance use disorder earlier in my journey because I had a way that was subclinical in nature. And so Soberint is here to say we have so many pathways of sober journeys. It is not just clinical intervention. It is not just around something that can be reimbursed by claims, because we don't touch insurance today. But what is your path? Is it a community group? Is it a AA alternative? Is it coaching with a peer? Is it a combination thereof? And then finding that. So it feels to me, having been sober for 20 years and watched all the pathways people have taken to get sober and sustain sobriety and different definitions of sobriety, that no one else has really done this. We've been very clinically focused. We've been very claims reimbursable focused, and we've done it all outside of the workplace.
Thank you, Marin. I love the personal approach, because you find that most of the time it's, okay, go into recovery, you have the interventions, go into recovery, and that's it. Doesn't matter who you are, right? Whether you're big, small, black, white, orange, pink, whether you, whatever, it doesn't matter. Whether you've been using substances for 20 years or 6 months. Everyone's just lumped into one program and sent off. And then when they come out, it's whoa, what are we going to do now? I don't know what to do. How am I going to cope with this? How am I going to deal with all this newness? So I love it that you have a personal path for each person. That's incredible.
And thank you for naming the part of the journey where they get out of treatment and it's like, and good luck. And
aftercare.
Stay sober. It's
called aftercare.
Yeah. So, part of what we're doing.
Relapse.
And then listen, I hear these stories all the time. People who are like, yeah, I got out of treatment. I went back to work. And that week I was supposed to be hosting a happy hour with C-suite customers. And I drank. And it's like, well, no wonder. Of course you drank. Like, that is bananas. So that part we're trying to raise awareness of too, which is like help people return to work. So I love what Kevin does of helping people find pathways into recovery, into sober, safe, recovery-friendly workplaces. Because if we can get people into places that have said, we are, as a company, are committed to being recovery-friendly, which is what all of our customers are now. A lot of them go get certified as officially recovery-friendly workplaces. It's such an awesome signal to the marketplace for recruitment efforts too, to be like, hey, we are a safe space for you to bring your recovery to. And if you need help, we will help you to the extent that we're able to get help. Now, that doesn't mean everyone's going to choose help. I'm not delusional. I recognize not everyone's going to say, yes, I'm willing to get help. And it doesn't mean that we're like, oh, you should be high on the job and you're fine. It's not saying any of that. What it is saying is that if you want to get help, we are a safe place to get help from, and we have pathways for you. And if you're someone in recovery, like Kevin's talking about in the work that his organization does, like, let's pair you with a recovery-friendly workplace.
Yes. I love that, because also what we don't realize is that the environment a lot of times is a predisposer to why you used the substance in the first place. So you're taking the person out of the environment, you're not healing the environment, and you're placing it back into the environment, and then you cry, and then you point fingers and say, hey, you terrible person, why did you relapse? If you even think about it, it's such a messed up system.
Correct. We have a ways to go. Correct. What helps, I think, sometimes with my customers when we're talking about going back to the idea of substance use disorder is a disease, and it is a recoverable disease.
Yes.
I will liken it to, if you had an employee who had a recurrence of their cancer, you would not get mad at them and fire them for having a recurrence of their cancer. You would try to help them. You would try to get them the support that they need. But yet, when someone relapses, which is pretty common for a lot of people who are trying to find their sober path, we are punishing.
Yes.
And again, it's tricky because, it's not us saying, oh, you should allow employees to be drunk or high on the work site. We get that that's not a safe choice for workplaces. But today, what happens is usually you just get fired. And maybe you get offered a therapy appointment through your employee assistance program. Maybe. But that's not a sufficient response to the disease.
No. It's just taking away the shame and the stigma and saying, yes, you don't stigmatize someone who's got diabetes or cancer. And you have all these programs within the workplace that supports it. But yet, if someone comes to work drunk, and I'm not saying it's a good thing at all, I'm just saying you can't just fire them. You have to look at it, at the situation, and say, what's happening here? Because people don't drink for nothing. We're just using substances. Use for nothing. There's always a deeper fear or deeper situation there, and we have to be compassionate enough and kind enough to actually give them that space to heal if they want it.
Well, I think it's why it's sometimes put not what's wrong with you, but what's happened to you. What is causing you to need to turn to substances to cope with life stresses and pain? Is there trauma? Now, I love what Marin's doing, because you're right. So often, Marin, they're not interested. I mean, I can think of some organizations that I know of that, they didn't say that bluntly, but the take home from when we talked about it was, we're not there yet. Let's see some other employers step out there, and then maybe we'll revisit this. Timing's everything. I get it, but we're out there fighting every day, at least in my organization, because people are dying from addiction.
Yeah.
And, whatever you call it, substance use disorder, SUD, addiction, the disease of addiction. Sometimes I hear it put that way to include gambling disorder. and process addictions. Now, that's not what I get into, but they're out there. My best wish, I guess, would be to see employers start to realize that this has affected most American families. I mean, if you go to somebody on the street, I'm not suggesting someone take this up, and ask a person, do you have someone in your life who's been touched by substance use disorder? Chances are virtually, if not everyone, is going to say they had someone at least who drank too much. So let's destigmatize this topic that we all know so well and the pain we all know so well, And I agree with Marin, not everyone needs inpatient care, but some people do. I was one of them. I did a traditional 28-day program, and people shouldn't be ashamed to say, you know what, I need to go away for 28 days. I have got to be taken away from that substance and have, traditional rehab, But we also shouldn't make it the only thing. In the 12-step model, I'm sure Marin would agree, you and I both recovered through it. It's not the only game in town. No. There are other paths.
Yeah. But Kevin, what you just said, I just need to highlight, Kaiser Family Foundation says 2 in 3 families are impacted by substance use disorder. Wow. So the majority of us are impacted.
Not Hyer, but yeah. I'll pick that.
We'll start there at least. And 10% of employees have untreated substance use disorder.
Sure.
10% are actively sick with substance use disorder. So, yeah, I don't say, while I understand companies are on different pathways, I'm also like, this is a core healthcare need and an accelerating healthcare crisis. It's not getting better. It's getting worse.
Yeah. And in the world right now,
it's getting worse. Yeah. Okay. So COVID did a number, and right now this period, I think, is going to do a number. Mm-hmm. Simultaneously, we're taking away benefits, and recovery community organizations are being defunded, and SAMHSA, so we made a lot of progress, and I'm scared that a lot of that progress is going to fall down because financial resources have been removed from these supportive organizations. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. And so I think I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. I recognize it takes time, and I'm also like, we're kind of out of time. We need companies to see that this is impacting their bottom line right now. And there's a great tool that I use to help bring that education from the National Safety Council and NORC. And it's called the Substance Use Disorder Employer Calculator. And it tells you, anyone can use it. It's a free resource. It's amazing. It will tell you for your organization, for your company size, for your location, how much you can expect substance use disorder is costing your company right now. And roughly, and I'll use a number based in Illinois for an administrative company, 1,000 employee company costs the company $1 million per year.
Wow.
And that is not commonly known. When I bring those numbers up and I break it down, I say, this isn't Soberance data. This is externally studied for many, many years, multiple, over 10 years data. This is literally what you're spending right now. So it's not really, yes, it's an investment to do different and to change, but you're already suffering the consequence. It's not like not investing in this makes that cost go away. It actually just ensures you continue to see that spend. So Kevin's right. There's a huge business case for why this work should be invested in. But again, we got to raise that awareness. There's such a lack of awareness of just how prevalent it is and just how costly it is, and that it is something that is good, makes good business sense in addition to being the right thing to do.
That's it.
There's groups like Soberance and the Hyer Calling Foundation gets into culture too. It starts changing cultures one organization at a time. More will follow suit, because you're so right, Marin. The culture has to change. You can create policies and I think they call it recovery ready if your policies align. But are you recovery friendly? Do you have that culture where someone could go to HR and say they or a family member? Families are the other side of this disease or this condition, whatever you want to call it as. Before they're getting managed out, or they're quitting, or they're just not productive, and all the negatives that come and the heartbreak from untreated addiction.
Yes. And also, as you were speaking, I was thinking about we have to change the whole culture of as you mentioned at the beginning, Marin, about we celebrate with, that's how we've been taught from a young age, hey, have a glass of wine, or when you celebrate with champagne or whatever it is. And it's okay to have happy hours. Everyone has happy hours, right? So we have to change the culture as well to say, you know what, it's okay. So for me, I'm sober, right? I don't. But it's okay for me to say, hey, let's have a mocktail, or I like a virgin drink, right? And we need to say, I think it's okay to say that without someone saying like, why? Why aren't you drinking? Why?
And it's so unfair with alcohol. You know, nobody's going to say to you, why don't you socially use crystal meth? But they're going to say to you, why don't you socially drink? You don't have to worry about that. Like when you're at a restaurant, you don't need to worry that your server is going to offer you some opiates with your meal to like, take off the stress from the week, but they're going to offer you a drink.
Yes.
It's not a competition, but men and women who overcome alcohol use disorder are very strong people because it's everywhere.
It is. I actually that's funny, Karina. I just did a post about that the other week of like, why aren't you drinking? Like, it's so, again, like we feel so, I don't know. We all have the individual right to question someone's choice, whether to drink alcohol or not. My experience is usually when I'm grilled, it's someone who's trying to assess for themselves if they drink too much.
Yes.
Because most people could care less as long as you're not taking their drink away. And so when someone really pushes me, I try to bring compassion to it. Because I know when I was not sober and I ran into someone who was, it was like seeing an alien. I was like, I don't understand. How are you in this bar not drinking? Like, that's not even a possibility for me. And so my questions were coming from a space of like, I couldn't fathom making that choice. Like, that just seems like another language, right? So, and there are lots of reasons people don't, you know, and so that's what we saw with the creation of Soberforce at Salesforce was there are people who took certain medications they couldn't drink on. There were people who felt better and more productive in the morning when they didn't drink. There are people who are aware of the health consequences of drinking. So they're like, no, thank you. There are a million reasons why people who are for religious reasons don't drink. Like there are so many reasons why people choose not to drink. It's actually a really personal question to ask a stranger. Why aren't you drinking?
Inappropriate. That's how we have to reframe it. You know, not in a way that offends people or, you know, a little levity, you know, this goes a long way when talking about this, but it's not an appropriate question. And we need to sort of normalize the assumption that people may or may not drink rather than the default people drink unless they tell you why they don't.
Yeah. So that's why the mocktail, what you talked about, Karina, with the mocktails is actually really exciting to see. It's like such a small change that has such huge implications to be able to go to a really nice restaurant and be able to select a really delicious mocktail. Not lemonade, let's be clear. Lemonade does not count, team. But there's some really great mixologist mocktails that like I will pay just as much for that as an alcohol drink, right?
Yes.
And so seeing that shift and that market explode is amazing because now I can have a drink in my hand and you're not going to ask me why are you drinking Diet Coke, right?
Yes.
And I can feel like I'm enjoying the celebratory nature of the happy hour or the toast. And there was this moment that Salesforce did that was so powerful where we had a company kickoff party and it's like thousands of people at this conference for this kickoff for a new fiscal year. And there's a champagne toast at the end. And for the first time, there was NA champagne in a champagne glass, like a flute next to the champagne, clearly labeled. And I was so touched that whoever planned that conference took time to think about including an NA option. Because in the past, toasting with a plastic water bottle doesn't hit the same.
No.
It does not hit the same.
It doesn't feel like a celebration. And so for the first time, like clinking glasses and being like, I'm part of this, but I'm still sober was the coolest moment. And so that's part of Soberance too, is that we work with our companies and our customers to look at how much is alcohol playing a role in your culture and where can we bring in mocktails. And we just had a great event with one of our customers, Olympia Hospitality, and they're a hotel company. They own 43 hotels, and they had this amazing mocktail feature during their leadership conference. And everyone was like, oh my God, these are so good. Like people were like, I can't believe how good this is. So it's those little intentional moments that can make a huge impact on someone who doesn't feel safe saying I'm 30 days sober or I'm 5 years sober, right? But like wants to still participate.
Yes.
And we've talked about workplace safety right now. Sometimes it's being what's called a newer term for inclusion. People should feel safe being able to say, I'm in recovery, because effectively it's a medical condition. And you're right, we would, and the legal parts of this is protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act if you're in recovery. Okay. And even if you actually in the moment have an active alcohol use disorder. So there are legal issues around this. Employers miss when you have a holiday party where there's a lot of booze at. Imagine how many sexual harassment claims begin, at TGI Fridays after work on a Friday or just at a holiday event. There's such a case for this. And it's such a positive message too. In a time when the world's on fire, whatever your views of things, no one would say it's peaceful right now. Let's go ahead and spread this message. Recovery is possible. It's good for the bottom line. We make great employees. And a company doesn't have to sacrifice its standards, its expectations at the same time. We're not asking employers to keep people around who repeatedly return to use, which some people use as a newer term for relapse, recurrence of symptoms, return to use, or just relapse. People know what it means.
Thank you for saying return to use. See, I still have stigmatized language too.
And we all do.
Yes.
We all do.
Yes. Yes, you're right. Language is very important. And you just have a different vision of substance use and addiction. Just think about, already just saying those words creates a different image within my mind. So we need to be sensitive to those things. So thank you. Thank you for that. It's just sometimes, you need to get that visceral feel so that because people relate more to that, because at the end of the day, that's what it is.
Well, and you have to, it's knowing your audience too, like if I'm working with some young adults who are going down some dangerous pathways, I'll say to them, you're addicted to X hard drug and you're going to go to prison if you don't stop, because they need to hear it. That's a different message than in a corporate setting.
Yes.
You have to adjust to your audience.
Yeah.
Karina, when you started this, you had mentioned, is it because someone who is actively in problematic substance use is a high performer and that's why it goes unnoticed or something? Like, is there a reason why we're not interfering or saying something in the workplace that has to do with performance? And I think you are right. I think what's under it is actually that people just don't know what to say at all. Yes. And so whether it's their performance is suffering or they're holding it together by their fingertips and they're producing results, even though it's clear that something's going on, I think at the root of it is just like, I don't know what words to say and how to say it. And so then therefore I say nothing. And so, that's also part of what we're doing at Soberanth is to give companies and specifically leaders the words to say to make it okay to ask for help, because that is, I think, what's underneath it. I think it's the same way with grief. Like our culture in the US is not great with dealing with death and loss. And so then, people say nothing.
Yes.
As opposed to like, it's better for you to fumble your way through and say something than to not say anything. And I think that is true also with substance use. And Kevin, you could probably speak to the legal perspective. I think people are also afraid of like, if I say the wrong thing, am I legally in trouble? So I'm just going to say nothing. And it's like, no, what you can say is, hey, I've noticed this. And if you're struggling, we have resources, and then just stop and listen.
I agree to stop and listen and just start with the facts you're observing. Your performance has slipped. What's going on in your life? And then if the culture has changed so that people know it's safe to talk about it, you've just opened the door for someone to say, I am drinking more than I should, or they have a problem with opiates. The opioid use disorder crisis is huge in America. A lot of people use pills to sleep, to calm down for pain. It's not only alcohol, but alcohol is certainly a really good place to start at, in a corporate setting. Also stimulant use, which was my problem, stimulants. People start using Adderall or Ritalin to perform, in a large law firm, or, all professionals have high stress. Yes. There's so many ways we turn to substances in our society. And some people can do it and some people can't. And the problem is by the time you know you can't, everybody else probably knows, and you're sometimes the last one to know. Wouldn't you agree with that, Marin? Sometimes
I would agree with that. No one said, what? When I got sober, there was,
my God, you got a problem?
There was no shock.
Maybe they'll say that to be polite to you, but that's not what typically they're thinking.
No.
You had a problem?
So weird.